My name is Catherine Monroe, and if life has taught me anything, it's that money is never a quiet friend. For 40 years, I watched my fortune grow, my homes appreciate, and my children's lives become easier, yet none of it ever brought peace. Peace died with Henry. Henry Monroe, my husband, my partner. Once our names shared the same letterhead, Henry and Catherine Monroe Investments. When he died, everyone called me a lucky woman. They said I was blessed. Millions in assets, 3 houses, a company, enough stock to keep 3 generations comfortable. But the day Henry was buried, I inherited only silence. Our stone house on the cliffs of Carmel by the sea turned into a museum of memories. Every room still breathed him. The lemon tree in the courtyard, the faint scent of cedar from his suits, and the echo of his laughter in the study. Each morning the smell of coffee filled the kitchen, yet one cup always remained untouched. I am 68 years old, and yesterday my daughter smiled and asked me for $150,000 for a boutique hotel project, she said, an investment. But I know what investment really means. I learned that word sitting beside Henry, our sleeves rolled up, spreadsheets glowing in the lamplight. Laura, my youngest, uses it like a fashion label now. Expensive, vague, impressive. That morning, she poured coffee for both of us. "Mom, it's a small opportunity," she said lightly. Small. Opportunities are rarely small to those who pay for them. Her smile didn't remind me of youth, it reminded me of distance. Because when my children call me Mom, it sounds like they're addressing a bank branch. When Henry died, his will was simple. All assets to Catherine Monroe. She will know their value best. And I did know their value, not as currency, but as effort. Every dollar was earned side by side with him. We studied contracts, endured recessions, bought and sold land when no one else dared. Now Laura lectures me about modern investing. My son James insists we must move into tech funds. And my grandchildren joke, "Grandma, you should buy stocks online." Each of them is right in their own world, but I still live in Henry's, one of respect, caution, and proportion. This morning, I looked out the kitchen window. The Pacific struck the rocks in its same eternal rhythm. Those waves never change, and that constancy teaches more than years of advice. Then it struck me, my life has become those same waves. My children come and go with predictable tides, always returning for the same reason, to take. None of them ever asks how I am. Not what I eat, not if I sleep well. Only, "Mom, what's your credit limit now?" And I, foolishly guilty, keep smiling because for years I've confused money with affection, handing them both in the same envelope. I thought if I gave enough, they would love me enough. But love doesn't grow by giving, it grows by sharing. I gave, and they learned to take. Last night, I opened one of Henry's old drawers. Inside was a sealed envelope dated 1998. His handwriting, steady, elegant. "If you're reading this, Catherine, I'm with you, just unseen. One day when our children leave you alone, remember this. Inheritance is more than money. Justice is the truest legacy." Justice. That word kept me awake until dawn. Henry always spoke about balance, said, "Give each what they've earned." I instead have spent years giving them what they wanted. Now I see it clearly. My generosity was guilt-painted gold. Tomorrow, I'm driving to Monterey. Patricia Gomez still runs her law office there. She handled Henry's estate. I'm going to speak with her about updating my will. But this isn't paperwork. It's the first quiet. When I left Carmel that morning, the fog was still clinging to the coastline, thin, white, and unwilling to let go. Henry used to call it the curtain of hesitation. I smiled at the memory as I turned onto Highway 1. The Pacific stretched endlessly to my right, blue and cold, reminding me of all the promises that had once felt eternal. By the time I reached Monterey, the air had cleared. The law offices of Patricia Gomez occupied a quiet corner above a wine shop and a bakery that smelled of cinnamon. It was the kind of place that didn't shout power, but I parked the car, checked my reflection in the mirror, and said quietly, "All right, Catherine." Inside, the receptionist recognized my name immediately. "Mrs. Monroe?" Patricia was the same as I remembered from Henry's estate meetings, composed, intelligent eyes behind simple glasses, her tone efficient but not unkind. For the next 20 minutes, I talked. Patricia listened. When I finished, she asked, "What do you want, Catherine? Not legally, personally." I stared at the bay through her window. "I want to stop rewarding selfishness," I said finally. "I want my money to outlive me in ways my children never could." She nodded slowly. "Henry used to say that justice is love with boundaries." A lump rose in my throat. "He did. You remember that?" "I remember everything he wrote. So, what kind of change do you have in mind?" "I want to create something permanent, a foundation, for education, maybe architecture or business scholarships, something that teaches effort, not entitlement." Patricia smiled faintly. "Then let's build it." She pulled a blank legal pad toward her. "What would you like to call it?" "The Henry Monroe Foundation." She wrote the name in capital letters at the top of the page. It looked right. It looked final. Over the next hour, she outlined what would happen. A new trust, asset transfers, tax protections, witnesses, and the clause that would change everything. 80% of my estate to the foundation, 10% to a managed education fund for my grandchildren, 10% reserved for smaller charities and personal bequests. "And your children?" Patricia asked gently. "They'll receive nothing directly." She didn't flinch. "You're sure?" "I've been sure for years," I said. "I just didn't have the courage to act on it." We finished the preliminary papers. Patricia slid a pen toward me. "Sign here, and the process begins." The ink felt heavy, like it carried more weight than its color. When I set the pen down, I realized my hands weren't shaking at all. Patricia smiled. "Congratulations, Catherine. You've rewritten your story." Outside, the wind off the ocean smelled of salt and pine. I stood for a long moment beside my car, breathing. Something inside me, that tight, invisible knot that had been there for years, finally loosened. That evening, I called Laura. "Mom," she answered, cheerful, too cheerful. "I was just going to call you. The investor meeting went so well, but we're short on the deposit." "Laura," I interrupted quietly, "I've made some financial decisions today. I won't be funding any new projects." Silence. "Wait, what?" "Mom, are you feeling all right?" "Perfectly fine," I said. "Just awake." "Awake? What are you talking about?" "You'll understand someday." And I ended the call before guilt could find a way in. The next morning, James called. "Laura says you're cutting everyone off. That true?" "Yes." "What's going on, Mom? Did someone get into your head?" "No," I said calmly. "I finally got out of it." He scoffed. "You can't just cut your own family out." "I can." And I just did. He hung up without saying goodbye. That night, I didn't sleep much, but not from regret, from clarity. I set the table myself that evening. It had been years since I'd done that, since Henry and I used to host partners and friends from the firm. Back then, I'd cared about details, where the candles went, which silverware caught the light best, how the reflection of the ocean filled the dining room with color. Tonight, I wasn't setting a table for guests. I was setting a stage. The long oak table gleamed beneath the chandelier. I opened Henry's old wine cabinet and chose one of the bottles he'd been saving for a day that matters. This one mattered. By 6:30, the Monroe family began to arrive. Laura first, wearing designer white and sunglasses despite the sunset. Her husband Richard followed, his cologne arriving a few seconds before he did. Then James and his wife Melissa, sleek and distracted, their phones glowing in their hands. Finally, my grandchildren, Emma and Lucas, rushed in with innocent laughter that softened the air for a fleeting moment. "Grandma!" Emma squealed, wrapping her arms around me. "Hello, sweetheart," I said, kissing the top of her head. "You look taller every time I see you." "Can I sit next to you?" "Of course," I smiled. "You always can." James pulled out a chair, eyeing the spread. "Wow, Mom, this looks formal." "It's an important night," I said. Laura laughed lightly. "What's the occasion? Are we celebrating something?" "In a way," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. "We're marking a transition." Dinner began pleasantly enough. Wine poured, small talk exchanged, laughter scattered like crumbs. But beneath the polite chatter, a current of expectation swirled. They were waiting for something. Waiting for the ask, the announcement, the next gift. I let them wait. James filled the silence first. "So, Mom, Laura told me you've been meeting with lawyers. Everything okay?" "Yes. Everything is finally okay." He frowned. "You're not changing anything major, are you? Taxes, the trust?" "I'm not changing the trust," I said softly. "I'm creating one." Laura's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean, creating one?" I folded my hands in my lap. "It's called the Henry Monroe Foundation. It was established this week." Richard backed in his chair. "Foundation? Like for charity?" "Exactly," I said. "For education, scholarships, entrepreneurship. For people who actually earn opportunity." Laura blinked. "That's nice, Mom, but you already have a family. Shouldn't we—" "You have," I interrupted, my voice calm but sharp. "You've had for years." The air changed. The clinking of cutlery stopped. Even the ocean outside seemed to pause. James spoke first, his tone clipped. "You're saying you're donating our inheritance?" "I'm saying," I answered, "that I'm returning it to its purpose." "Which is?" "Building something that outlasts greed." Laura's eyes glistened, not from sadness, but from shock. "Mom, you can't be serious. After everything we've done for you?" I looked at her then, really looked at her. The daughter I once rocked to sleep had vanished. In her place was a woman measuring love by deposit slips. "What exactly have you done for me, Laura?" I asked quietly. "Other than make sure I never forgot how useful money can make a mother feel?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. Richard tried to intervene, his voice oily and smooth. "Catherine, surely there's a misunderstanding." "There isn't," I said, meeting his eyes. "Henry built this fortune with me, not for you, and it will go where effort still matters." Melissa whispered to James, "She's lost it." I turned toward them. "No, Melissa, I found it." Laura pushed back her chair suddenly. "This is insane. You can't just cut us out."
I didn't cut you out, I said evenly. You removed yourselves when you turned every kindness into a transaction. Mom, stop acting like a martyr. We've always been there for you. When it benefited you. When you needed tuition covered, or rent, or seed money. But not when I was along in this house for Christmas. Not when I buried Henry alone. Silence. The truth settled like dust in the light between us. Emma reached out timidly and touched my hand. Grandma, are you sad? I looked down at her, at the only pair of eyes at that table not calculating a loss. No, sweetheart, I said softly. I'm just done being tired. Laura's voice broke through, brittled like glass. So that's it. You're giving everything away to strangers? To students.
I never thought peace could cause suspicion, but apparently it can. It had been a month since the gallery benefit, and for once my days passed without calculation. I woke with the sunrise, took walks along the cliffs, answered letters from scholarship applicants. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt mine. Then, one morning, I opened the newspaper and saw my name. Front page of the Carmel Tribune. Socialite Catherine Monroe cuts off children, donates millions to strangers. There it was, my life, reduced to a headline. Underneath, a photograph from the gallery, me smiling beside Evelyn and the students, a glass of champagne in hand. The caption, the matriarch who chose outsiders over her own blood. I didn't need to read who'd spoken to the reporter. The quotes were unmistakable. It's been heartbreaking, Laura said. My brother and I have tried to reach her, but she's become cold, distant. We think someone's influencing her decisions. James added, she's been isolated. We just want to make sure she's protected. Protected. The word tasted sour. By noon, my phone was ringing again. Reporters, old friends, curious acquaintances. I ignored them all until Patricia called. I'm assuming you've seen the paper, she said. I have. They're preparing a legal claim. Undue influence, exactly what we discussed. I smiled faintly. Then we were right to prepare. They don't have a case, Patricia said. The evaluation, the witnesses, the documentation, it's airtight. I know, I replied, but they're not after the estate anymore, Patricia. They're after the story. That night, the doorbell rang. Evelyn stood there, her face lit by the porch light, concern in her eyes. I saw the article, she said softly. Are you all right? I nodded. This isn't the first time they've used pity as a weapon. She stepped inside, her presence filling the house with warmth. Catherine, if you'd like, the gallery can release a statement, clarify that your foundation is legitimate, that you're in full control. No, I said, shaking my head. That's what they want, a fight in public. I fought enough battles with witnesses. This one, I'll win in silence. Evelyn studied me, then smiled. You really are formidable. Just old, I said, old enough to know that truth doesn't need applause. Weeks passed. The lawsuit came and died exactly as Patricia predicted. The evidence was overwhelming, the judge impatient. James didn't even appear in person.
Laura did, though. She looked smaller in court than I'd remembered. Not physically, spiritually. When it was over, she wouldn't meet my eyes. Outside, reporters asked questions, their microphones like weapons. Laura brushed past me without a word. I almost called after her. Almost. But some distances aren't meant to be closed by sound. That night, Evelyn invited me for dinner. Her gallery had just sold its first piece through the Foundation's art education program. The artist? Mateo, the student who'd once told me he couldn't afford tuition. He insisted we give you this, she said, handing me a small wrapped canvas. I opened it carefully.